a lot of people who are talking about it understand, but they miss explaining it to people. We suddenly feel that we were in the driver's seat and we have been taken away. I do not want to name people, but almost everyone would explain to you up till here that this is why you do not have any free will. Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to another episode in the Unlearning Playground Podcast. The topic for today's episode is a fascinating one. It is something that has come up in quite literally multiple one-on-one sessions that I've recently had, and it has also been requested in my Ask a Human Not an AI portal by, I do not remember the name, Ritvik, I think was the name of the guy. So I thought, because this is a topic that has been discussed with me multiple times and I have been talking about it with a lot of different people, I thought I'll do a podcast episode dedicated to it. And I chose a podcast episode because I didn't really want to prepare everything about this video. I wanted it to be more free flowing, and these podcast episodes generally suit that purpose a lot more. So here we are. Now, when we're talking about free will, for those of you who would not know what the question of free will is all about, I'll give a brief introduction. It's a very simple question, honestly. The question is, do I have free will? Do I have the agency to actually make free, independent choices? Or is all of my life already predetermined? Is everything that I do going forward in my life, even in this moment or in moments to come, is all of that already predetermined by everything that has already happened in my life so far? And here we are. This is the question of free will. Do I have free will? Do human beings have free will? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Because almost all of our lives, we actually do live under the idea that we are making free choices. All of us do. This is an innate human experience to feel that we are in control of our lives. Of course, there are a lot of different situations in our lives where we feel that we cannot control the situation. That's a human experience too. But it is very innately human to feel that we are the driver of our cars in one sense. So to question whether you're actually really the drivers of your car is something that gives sort of a shock to a lot of people. And of course, I remember the first time I came across the topic of free will, I was talking about this with a friend and he had come up with this question for me. And I remember back in the day, this was definitely before 2017. So it's been more than 7 years now. Wow. I was sitting in his home and we were just having a random discussion. Believe me, this was a Chetan Narang who had not read a single book apart from his course textbooks from school and college. So I had not read any of these beautiful books. I had not come across any podcast, any spiritual gurus and whatnot. There was not even a shred of this Chetan Narang in that Chetan Narang. And this friend of mine, he had the guts to ask me, do you think we have free will? And I had absolutely no clue about even the idea of free will. And I do not even know what I said at that time. I think to save face, I would have said something quite random. And he laughed at me for, I think, a minute or so and then explained to me what the whole idea is all about. And then he pointed me to Sam Harris. He pointed me to a book Sam Harris had actually written about the topic of free will. I must have it here somewhere. It's a beautiful book. And in that was my first introduction to the idea of free will. And I'll honestly tell you, that book really did shake me up. Because, now again, I'm doing this from memory, so I do not want to push too much into it. But it did shake me up because there were a lot of things that Sam Harris explains that actually go against how you usually would look at your life. And it also has practical implications. So consider for a moment that we're actually talking whether we have agency over our lives, or whether everything that has happened in our life so far is what is going to determine what is going to happen in the next moment. Now, if the latter is the case, if we do not have any free will, it is quite obvious that it's going to become very hard to go about your life the way you were going about it previously. I mean, consider a very simple example. This is something I think Sam Harris talks about in his book. He gave an example of two guys who come over to a home to rob the home, and they end up, I don't know what was the exact situation, but they end up tying the guy who was who was there, they ended up raping the daughters and the wife, and I think they ended up murdering all of them after that. They ended up, I don't know if they even ended up burning the entire house down. And they were eventually caught. They were actually asked eventually why they did what they did, and they had no answer. They simply said that we were there to rob them, and then one thing led to another, and it just happened. I think they regretted what they did, but they could not express why they did what they did. And now, if you think about you not having any agency over what is happening, everything that has happened in your life so far is going to lead you to do whatever it is that you do next. It kind of throws guilt out of the picture, doesn't it? In some sense it does. It kind of throws, even someone may take it to the extreme idea that these people were not even responsible for what they did, and they're not even to blame for what they did. They should not even be punished maybe for what they did, because they did not do it. In some sense it was done via them, and that's one way of thinking about it. And I think Sam Harris, how he explained it in that example in that book, he said that almost everyone feels that if I was in this person's shoes, if I was in these culprits' shoes, I would not have done this. But here is the catch. You can never really be in someone else's shoes, isn't it? Because to be in someone else's shoes, especially in this kind of a situation, let's just say to be in that person's shoes would actually mean, really, literally being in that shoes would actually mean going through that person's entire life, not having a shred of your own ego, your own bias on that person, but going through that person's life, everything that has happened with that person so far. And if you were to go into that person's shoes literally from that perspective, I think it's very obvious that you would have done what this person would have done, right? And there it is. There is the argument against there being no free will at all. Because if A implies B implies C implies D, and I'm overly simplifying, this is an extremely complex equation, but if all of everything that has happened in your life so far has led you to this point, there is a perspective in which you can say that everything that is going to happen in this moment is already predetermined. It's true in that sense, and therefore in that sense you quite literally do not have free will in this particular moment of time. And I think almost every video that you'll watch on the internet, especially from the scientific community, I do not want to name people, but almost everyone would explain to you up till here that this is why you do not have any free will. A lot of people also take up neurobiology into it. They would explain to you how the different hormones in your body, how the different neuromodulators in your body control your emotions, control your actions, etc. And therefore they also determine your choices, and therefore you do not really have any free will. You do not really have any say, not even a shred of choice in whatever action is supposed to be taken going forward. But there is more to this episode. I want to talk more deeply about what it is that really we should be discussing when we talk about the topic of free will. Let's take a little breather and be back in just a second. And we are back. So we just discussed an introduction to the entire topic of free will, the entire question of do I have free will? And I hope you have a fair idea of what we think about when we want to ask the question, do I have free will? When all of those videos on YouTube which you watch, which explain how you do not have any free will, what they talk about. And what I've told you up till here is actually right. It's actually quite right. But I want to now talk about something that I find particularly missing from a lot of those YouTube videos, which is something that I feel a lot of people who are talking about it understand, but they miss explaining it to people. And also, there's a disclaimer here, a lot of people who are talking about free will also do not understand this. So I do not know where whoever is listening to this right now would lie, but I want to give a shot at explaining it. So when a question such as this is asked, when it is asked, do I have free will? Before answering in a yes or a no, based on what you understand, the first thing that should be questioned is, a little sub part of this question itself, which is, who is the I that is actually wanting to have free will? And believe me, I'm not talking from that neo-Advaita, neo-non-duality standpoint, where every question that is asked by the questioner is rubbished off by saying, question the questionnaire and question the questioner or something like that, and dissolve the questionnaire and you will get the answer or something like that. I'm not doing any voodoo thing here. In fact, those words are also true in some sense, but they're mostly used by gurus to actually deviate from having to give a proper answer. I'm not doing that here. But what I'm trying to do is to get to the bottom of something. What I mean when I say that you should question who is the I that is wanting to have free will, I want to focus on the point that almost all of us are leading our lives in the illusion that the conscious self is the I that should have free will. The conscious self meaning whatever we are conscious of. You know, it's a fairly fuzzy boundary, but we do have a lot of things that we are conscious of, and then a lot of things are happening underneath our conscious awareness, which we do not really have any awareness of, in the sense of having awareness of something that I'm doing consciously. A bit of a circular definition, but hear me out. For example, it's possible for people to feel, in fact, this is again, I think, a very normal human experience, to feel that my heart beats itself, I do not beat my heart. And therefore, there is an I in this body somewhere, I as in the letter I. So myself resides in this body somewhere, but a lot of things happening in this body are not done by me, are not even me, they're just happening. And therefore, we differentiate that conscious self from everything else that is the body. And when we do that distinction, the distinction is sort of important. It's also sort of semantic. When you say that my heart stopped working, it gives more. You cannot ever say that my heart stopped working, right? But you can say that maybe that person's heart stopped working or something like that. But saying that that person stopped beating their heart seems a bit off, doesn't it? So what I'm trying to say is, we kind of have this demarcation between our conscious selves and whatever is happening underneath our conscious awareness. And there is a utility to it. But because we have demarcated that conscious self from the unconscious self, I don't know when we did it. I do not know when human beings did that. But because we live under this idea that there is a conscious self and then there is everything that is happening underneath it, and this is not me, even when we ask the question, do I have free will? We want the conscious self to have free will. And if the answer comes up that no, whatever has happened before in your life, which includes, of course, everything that is going on underneath in your unconscious awareness, because you suddenly realize that no, that unconscious plays a massive role in determining what happens going forward, we suddenly feel that we were in the driver's seat and we have been taken away. Now, what I want to make you understand is the fact that this conscious self feels as if it is the driver, but it is not the driver of the car. Because the unconscious self, whatever is happening underneath your conscious awareness, is also a part of you. You can differentiate it as conscious self and unconscious self, etc. But that unconscious self is also you. So all of those neuromodulators, all of those hormones, etc., they're also you. They are a part of your I. And therefore, you suddenly realize that when you start to consider yourself from this standpoint, when you start to consider that it's not only your conscious self that is you, everything else that is going on underneath, all of the unconscious parts of your psyche that have been built because of years of your experience, because of years of human experience overall, because all of us also share a collective consciousness that we're not aware of consciously. When you start to consider that all of that is also a part of you, all of that is actually your I, you understand that almost every time when you have asked this question, or almost every time when you have watched a YouTube video which explained to you, do you have free will or not? it was always from this limited self. It was always from this limited conscious self that you were trying to question whether you have free will or not. But when you understand that your conscious self is not your entire identity, it's not your entire self, and you also realize that the unconscious self, everything else that is going on underneath the covers of your conscious self, is also a part of your I think in one manner of speaking, this question sort of takes a backseat. Because when you say that, do I have free will? You want to consider who is the I that wants to have free will. When you realize that your conscious self is wanting to have free will, but your conscious self does not even exist as such apart from, or rather let me say that your conscious self cannot have free will because it's not your entire identity anyway. It's a small part of your entire identity. And therefore this question takes a backseat and you want to explore further into what is your real I. And when you start to do that, so there are so many unconscious parts of your psyche that are, you would have, once you start to realize it, you would see that in every single relationship that you've had throughout your life so far. I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, your relationships with your parents, your siblings, your cousins, your friends, your partners, of course, your office workers, your schoolmates, your college guys, etc. All of them. Every single relationship that you've ever had in your life has always served as sort of a mirror to reflect back at you whatever it is that you're not conscious of, especially not conscious of in your own psyche. But it is still a part of you. It is still a part of your own self. And all of these relationships, all of the events that have happened so far in your life have also shaped your I, have also shaped your conscious as well as your unconscious self. So therefore, what I'm trying to get towards is that you would come to a realization that the demarcation between this is me, this is my I, and this is the external circumstances, the external situation that is separate from my I, you would understand that that boundary is a fuzzy boundary. There is no well-defined boundary between your I and all of other life with a capital L almost. It is a fuzzy boundary. And you would also realize that your I, your self, is never really a fixed entity. It's, in one manner of poetic speaking, it is more a verb than it is a noun. It's never really this static thing. It is always flowing. There are so many things that yourself encompasses within itself as we go on about our lives. And therefore, the fuzzy boundary, the fact that this is not a fixed entity, and the fuzzy boundary would also imply that there's a fuzzy boundary with the external circumstances, right? So the separation between you, yourself, and the external circumstances, all of other life as such, this separation itself is not really a fixed separation. It's fuzzy. We are more connected with life than we are usually conscious of. Now, when you realize this, you suddenly realize that the question, do I have free will, almost loses its value, doesn't it? Because your I that wanted to have free will does not exist apart from its external circumstances, does not exist apart from its surroundings. It does not have an independent existence away from all of life with a capital L. And therefore, wanting your I to have free will in the sense it should be free, it should have complete agency over whatever choice it takes, that I is not separate from its external circumstances. Your I has been formed from your past, right? So how can it be free of its past and take decisions without even a shred of a resultant momentum from its past? Your I is being shaped in this moment by whatever is happening right now. Neurobiologists would talk about all the different hormones passing through your system right now because of all the different external stimuli. Yes, they are passing through my body and they are being a part of me. I am more a verb than I am a noun. I'm never a fixed entity. And therefore, if those hormones are making me take a different choice, that is myself taking that choice, right? I do not exist apart from those neuromodulators. I do not exist apart from those hormones to make an independent choice. And therefore, what I want to convey to you is that whenever we ask the question, do I have free will? We ask it from a very limited standpoint. We ask it almost always from the standpoint of this conscious self, which feels it is independent from its surroundings and wants to have a free will, wants to have complete independent agency over all of its choices. And I want to break this myth for you that you do not exist apart from your surroundings. You do not have a separate existence from your external circumstances, your external situations, from life with a capital L. And now, having said all of what I said so far, there is still a missing variable to the entire equation. Because what I've explained so far about free will still sort of assumes an almost a biological machine sort of a model for a human being, in the sense that human beings are nothing but, or rather myself in this moment is nothing but a resultant momentum from whatever has happened in the past, and it is acted upon by whatever is happening in the present moment. And if we have these two variables, we can predict deterministically what will happen in the next moment. So it's almost like we are all biological machines who have these two variables, and every single choice that we make in whichever moment we are in can be determined if we were able to determine these sort of variables to this equation. Fascinating, isn't it? It's a fascinating way to think about it. Now, I think there is one more variable that should be considered in every single equation that you consider, which will determine what choice you make going forward. And that is the variable of self-awareness. Now, I'm obviously oversimplifying it. I'm obviously breaking it down into pieces while there is no such demarcation that exists on it, honestly. But like that band, I think Boyzone was the band, who said, it's only words, and words are all I have to take your heart away. I will have to use all of these words to explain what I want to explain. So keep hearing me out. There is a resultant momentum from the past. There is a momentum, or rather there is an effect of whatever is happening in the present moment. And then there is your self-awareness. There is the awareness that yourself has of itself. Now, in one manner of speaking, this self-awareness can also be considered as a part of the resultant momentum from the past, because your level of self-awareness in any given moment would be dependent on how your life has been so far, right? Because in that manner of speaking, everything is determined from your past. But keep hearing me out. I'm going to make a case for this. So, if you are aware of yourself, every human being is aware of themselves. But the difference between man and man is one of degree and not of kind. And therefore, there are degrees to the level of self-awareness that different individuals have. Someone may be almost oblivious to their own psyche, which would manifest in the form of someone who would, a very rudimentary example, but consider someone you would have met who always puts the blame on other people for whatever is happening with their life. Now, this kind of a person would always feel that I have done nothing wrong at all. There is nothing wrong with me, but it is the other people in my life. There is the society, there is the government, there is the my manager, there is my employees, etc. All the rest of it, my teachers and my parents and all the rest of them. All of them are to blame for whatever has happened in my life. Almost everyone who would use this kind of a statement would lie in the almost in the lower rung of self-awareness ladder, and it keeps going all the way up. So there is a difference to the degree of how aware you are of your own psyche. And if you are healthily aware of your own psyche, if you are healthily aware of your own unconscious, I think that determines where your life goes forward from here on, what choices you make at any given moment. And it is an important variable to this equation, because I think that sort of gives a hint of free will to ourselves. We get free will, ourselves achieve free will once we become, or rather as we become more and more aware of our own selves. Now, what I mean let me give you a very simple example. This is something I use in I've been using in almost all of my one-on-one sessions where I was talking about free will. So consider me. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I am in the lower rung of self-awareness. I do not think too much before reacting. I am always easily triggered, and therefore if something happens in front of me and let's say I want to react in a certain manner by maybe being angry, maybe shouting at another person, etc. I just do that and be done with it. I'm that sort of a person. Now, there could be a host of reasons for why I am the way I am. It could be emotional neglect as a kid. It could be the fact that I was bullied by my friends as a kid and whatnot. There could be a host of other such reasons, right? But whatever be your reasons, if you are not aware of this part of your psyche, if you're not aware that you are the one who can actually control your anger, you are the one who can actually see that you are always being angry in the situation and it's not the situation that is making you angry. If you're not aware of this, you will keep acting in that direction. And therefore, in one manner of speaking, you can say that this person is always going to be, this person's choices will always be determined by his resultant momentum from the past, which has formed his anger issues, and then the current situation where he is in right now, which is triggering him, and therefore he responds angrily. Now consider that this person, let's say 2 years down the line, he's 32 now, he's married, he has a kid, and now this guy is coming from office, he has had a very stressful day at work, so he is ripe for an angry reaction to a situation. He comes home, his kid is waiting for him. Let's say it's been let's stretch the timeline. Let's say he's 35, it's been 5 years, so his kid is waiting for him with a painting. He's been painting ever since dad left in the morning for office, and he's been waiting to show it to dad. And this painting is not really a good one, and my guy who is just coming from office, has a stressful day at work, does not want to look at an ugly painting right now, and he does not even want to talk to anyone, let alone a child who has been waiting for his dad for 5 hours already or 10 hours already. So he comes in the door, the child rushes to him, shows him the painting, and this guy, because he's ripe for being angry, right? This guy responds angrily and maybe even pushes the kid away and says, theek hai, or whatever, maybe even throws the painting away and says that I'm going to look at it later or whatever. But this is one reaction. This is one reaction that if this person is not aware of his own psyche, it's very likely that this person will act in this manner. Versus if this person is working on himself, this person is becoming more aware of his own psyche, is becoming aware of the reasons for why he is the way it is. That is one level of shadow work that you do. But another level of shadow work is simply becoming aware of, this is who I am, this is what my unconscious acts like, this is what my unconscious feels like, etc. And if he's at least doing the latter work, he is more likely to react in a different manner. Because if this person is somewhat above the level of self-awareness that we initially talked about, he would know that I am right now in a situation, I've been through a day which triggers me. If I go into a situation that is triggering me, I'm very likely to act in an angry manner, and therefore I'm going to maybe take a few deep breaths, I'm going to maybe have a couple of glasses of water and relax and cool down a bit. And even if a triggering situation happens, then if I see myself about to react angrily, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to maybe delay the response. I'm going to maybe delay the entire situation even. Now, this is the kind of difference that I want you to understand. In one manner of speaking, this guy now has more free will than the guy who has lower level of self-awareness. Because a guy with lower level of self-awareness would simply react because there is a resultant momentum from the past which gives him anger issues. There is a current situation which triggers the anger in him, and he responds angrily. This guy is a resultant momentum from the past which gives him anger issues. there is an external situation which triggers him, but this guy also has a heightened level of self-awareness which enables him to look at the situation from a sort of a detached viewpoint and then say that maybe I'm not going to react in this manner right now. Now, technically speaking, this self-awareness is also a part of this person's I. It's also a part of this person's self. And therefore, you cannot still say that this person has free will in the sense that this person exists separate from his environment and is now executing free agency over the situation. I'm not saying that. But what I'm trying to say is that this is the missing variable to the equation that almost all YouTube videos miss out. Almost all, even neurobiologists, even people discussing the topic of free will, the number one thing that I think they miss out is the fact that they do not talk about the fact that your I is never really separate from its surroundings, and therefore the question itself is sort of moot at some point. But even if it's not moot, the second thing that is extremely important to understand is that because you can distinguish, because you can differ from other people based on your level of self-awareness, a person with a heightened self-awareness, a person who is more aware of his or her own psyche, especially the unconscious parts of his or her own psyche, is closer to executing free will. Because there is this missing variable that a person who is very low in self-awareness, he cannot change, or rather there is almost no change that that person brings to his choices compared to a person who understands that this is how I usually react to situations, this kind of situations usually trigger me, this is what usually happens or has been happening with my life so far, and because I'm aware of all of this, I am going to not react in this manner. All of this awareness is also a part of your I, but this is the only thing that you can actually have control over. This self-awareness is the only thing that can give you more agency over your own life compared to, let's say, an animal. So that's it. That is what I would want to explain to you about free will. If you have stayed with me up till here, you would understand that 1, we do not have free will because the I that wants to have free will is not free from its external circumstances. Life with a small l is never completely independent from life with a capital L. We do not have this separate existence that can then have this separate free will. And therefore, once you understand that, once you start to integrate, once you start to internalize and become more aware of your own unconscious, become more aware of your own shadow, your own psyche, this question of being free from life is itself dropped. Because the separation itself was the illusion that was making you question all of these things in the first place. And once you drop that separation, once you become more integrated, once you start to looking at your life as a whole, this question will get dropped. We are all connected to life. We are all connected to life with a capital L. We are all expressions of that one life, of that one consciousness. We are different in many ways. We are similar in extremely countless ways. And we are all connected nonetheless. So try to go in that direction. Instead of pondering over whether you have a free will, whether you have a free separate existence from all of life, try to go towards the direction of connection, towards the direction of oneness. But now you can question whether going in that direction is your choice. Now that you've listened to this podcast, you know that if you keep becoming more and more aware of your own psyche, if you keep becoming more aware of your own true I, you can go in that direction. You can at least try, because if you do not become aware of your psyche, you are the kind of person you do not want to become. Because anyone who's questioning, do I have free will, really wants the answer to be yes, you have free will. So if you want to go towards the direction of yes, you have free will, you have to go in the direction of becoming more self-aware. And going in the direction of becoming more self-aware will eventually take you to the direction of becoming more connected with life as a whole. Now, this is also something I talked about in season 2, episode 1 of my podcast, where I talked about being and becoming, and the being section, how you can be in life, how you are connected to life, is something that is very close to what I'm talking about here. If you have not listened to that episode, make sure you check it out on your favorite audio platforms or on YouTube. And make sure you like this video if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, make sure you leave the show a rating and a review on your favorite platform. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel too, because that is where the meat of the content is coming out. That's about it. I'll see you in the playground soon again. Until next time, peace out.